It's going to be a zero-sum, nasty Malthusian society. It will push towards, something that's much more autocratic, much more totalitarian, because the pie won't grow. People will be much nastier.
So like most of my videos, this whole thing started because I made a huge embarrassing mistake. A couple weeks back, I made a video reacting to an interview with Peter Thiel. That's not even the huge embarrassing mistake, which was, shamefully, I broke one of my own rules. I saw a word I didn't know and I didn't look it up in the dictionary, because I didn't feel like it. It's a word Peter Thiel loves to say, Malthusian.
Sociopathic Malthusian. Malthusian calculus is the sort of Malthusian.
So I made that short montage for the video and decided to not look up the word due to laziness. But many viewers pointed out the significance of Malthusianism as it relates to Peter Thiel's worldview and said I should look into it. So I did, and those commenters were right. It is significant. Now, just a heads up if it wasn't obvious, this one's mostly a podcast with occasional visuals for sourcing. I write a lot, but making videos takes a long time. So between high-effort video essays like the Elon sequel I promise I'm almost done with, I'm going to be releasing some shorter research projects, loose thoughts, or whatever this is. Malthusian, according to dictionary.com, means something relating to or characteristic of the English economist and clergyman Thomas Robert Malthus. So that didn't really help at all. Why is this crusty, dead church and money guy from England so famous? Well, most of that would be his theories about population control. Says Britannica, Malthus thought that the betterment of humankind is impossible without stern limits on reproduction. Malthus argued that since humans' ability to grow and distribute food was far slower than humans' ability to create more humans, we, and by we Malthus would have meant high-status white men, should control which people in society get to have babies, and which don't. In 1798, he wrote a treatise entitled An Essay on the Principle of Population, which he originally published anonymously, but later wanted to put his name on because it became his enduring legacy.
The power of population is indefinitely greater than the power in the earth to produce subsistence for man,
said Malthus, probably in that accent.
That premature death must in some shape or other visit the human race.
Sorry, I'm done with voices, I think. So right off the bat, one thing we know about Thomas Malthus is that he was wrong. Today's English economists and clergymen, and also lots of other people in all sorts of places, are concerned about population decline. We, and when I say we, I mean humans, in fact, have an overabundance of food and declining birth rates. We have famine despite technically having plenty of food to go around, if only it could get around. But the problem is getting food, and let's also add in water, medicine, and clothing to the populations who need it the most. The people who own the means of production and the people who own the means of distribution are super abundantly wealthy. Like, let's say you watching this, hypothetically, think that ending world hunger would be a good thing. And let's also just say that the billionaire fairy tonight dumps $10 billion worth of hard cash on your lap. Well, that would be bad probably. So after getting reconstructive lap surgery, which you can thankfully now afford, how would you even go about getting $10 billion worth of food, water, and clothes to people who need it? You could use your money to buy enough food and water to last your whole lifetime and your children's lives and their children's lives. But to get a few months worth of necessities to people in need, there are all sorts of gates and gatekeepers, many of whom want there to be an underclass. And these gatekeepers will use their money, power, and influence to stop your efforts. World hunger is a choice humans have made. Not all humans together, but a small handful of powerful, greedy, wealthy humans over time have made those choices for all of us, because they think they deserve to make choices for all of us. Thomas Malthus believed that a certain class of people, thankfully the sort of person he already was, were wiser than lower-class people, and it was in the best interest of the peasants to heed the wisdom of the lords.
Malthus saw the growing number of poor people on the English streets, and he did what any reasonable thinker would do. He analogized them to rabbits.
We don't have to stretch all the way into our day to see that Malthus was wrong, by the way. His work failed to predict even the very near future, such as England's agricultural revolution, which would make food production far faster and more efficient. Time has shown that a country's population does not keep exponentially growing over time. It tends to plateau. I've been focusing on the negative, but Malthus's original treatise deserves some credit for its observations about population. Writing for Scientific American, Michael Shermer notes, it inspired Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace to work out the mechanics of natural selection, based on Malthus's observation that populations tend to increase geometrically, 2, 4, 8, 16, whereas food reserves grow arithmetically.
Small arithmetic increases in food.
Leading to competition for scarce resources and differential reproductive success, the driver of evolution. But that's all from a 2016 article entitled Why Malthus is Still Wrong. The author cites journalist Matt Ridley's book The Evolution of Everything in detailing some of the ways in which Malthusianism failed even at the time. For example, the English Poor Law implemented by Queen Elizabeth I in 1601 to provide food to the poor was severely curtailed by the Poor Law Amendment Act of 1834, based on Malthusian reasoning that helping the poor only encourages them to have more children and thereby exacerbate poverty. The British government had a similar Malthusian attitude during the Irish potato famine of the 1840s, Ridley notes, reasoning that famine was, quote, an effective mechanism for reducing surplus population. Surplus population. Would you look at that, honey? After our monthly population budget, we have some surplus humans left over. How should we spend them?
In the century before 1846, Ireland's population had grown significantly, and many English thinkers saw the famine as an outcome of Malthus's predictions. From this point of view, providing food or aid to the Irish was futile. It could only delay the cycle of misery until its downward swing scythed down even more people.
Malthusianism was the backbone of many eugenics arguments, for of course it's not that there were too many people, it's that there were too many of the wrong kind of people. And so, yes, I am beginning to think I have a sense of why Peter Thiel uses this word a lot. Like Malthus, Thiel is a high society figure who believes that too many of the wrong kinds of people are having babies. Like Malthus, he believes in the Antichrist and a coming Armageddon. Like Malthus, the certainty of divine destruction is baked into every calculus. There's an irony in the fact that these biblical zealots, who believe humans are not really animals but rather God's special creation, children of God, consistently underestimate that humans are clever, that we are different from our fellow primates. We have imaginations, can foresee possible problems, envision multiple solutions, and communicate with millions of other humans all over the world because of useful tools humans have invented. That same Scientific American piece quotes writer Ronald Bailey, who said, quote, Malthusians cannot let go of the simple but clearly wrong idea that human beings are no different than a herd of deer when it comes to reproduction. But okay, here's where it gets a little tricky when it comes to Peter Thiel. Does he believe in Malthusianism? Is Peter Thiel himself a Malthusian? He uses the word a lot, but in what context? As I noted in my last video, Thiel often avoids concrete language about what he believes, breaking up even the simplest of questions into discursive hypotheticals.
I think we have to find some way to talk about these technologies where the technologies are dangerous, but it's probably, in some sense, it's even more dangerous not to do them. It's even more dangerous to have a society where there's zero growth. My intuition is that that will end very badly politically. It's going to be a zero-sum, nasty Malthusian society.
It's like he's saying, if we don't get control of this stagnation, we will end up in a Malthusian situation.
There are intellectual questions. How much, how many breakthroughs are we having? How do we quantify these things? Like, what are the returns of going into research? There certainly are diminishing returns to going into science or going into academia generally. And then maybe this is why so much of it feels like this sociopathic Malthusian kind of an institution, because you have to throw more and more and more at something to get the same returns.
It's hard to tell, is he saying that it would be sociopathic to take a Malthusian approach? Or is he saying that we will inevitably end up in some Malthusian, what? But it doesn't really matter because Malthus was wrong. After all this, I maintain that Peter Thiel speaks in verbal spatter paintings. He's throwing out words in flicks and spurts to see what pretty patterns they make, but he has intentionally chosen this color palette. Words, phrases, and references to learned great men that conjure images of war, Armageddon, collapse, and stagnation. Nobody knows what it means.
No one knows what it means, but it's provocative.
No, it's not. It
gets the people going.
There, now it technically counts as a YouTube video. So, does Peter Thiel believe in resource scarcity causing the collapse of the population? Yesn't. He sometimes intimates that he does not believe this, and sometimes he does the opposite. Does he believe that climate science is a real science? Well, there's several different things that one could say.
I always, the linguistic cut is always when people use the word science, I'm in favor of science, I'm not in favor of science in quotes, and when it's always a tell that it's not real science. And so when we call it climate science or political science or social science, you're just sort of making it up, and you have an inferiority complex to real science, which is something like physics or chemistry.
You don't feel that climate science is a real science? it is. There's several different things one could say. It's possible climate change is happening.
What he definitely does believe in is the Malthusian notion of an elite class controlling populations of lower classes. He wants to ensure our world continues to be based on ruthless greed and hierarchy. He wants to ensure that most of us are forced into a lower class and stay there, especially those of us who are not white men like him. Though I might mention to my fellow whites, I don't love that phrase, but this isn't going to work out well for most white people either. What of white men with disabilities or chronic illnesses, or who just have different beliefs than the current administration? Perhaps like we should aggressively tax billionaires and soon to be trillionaires. We should do something legislatively about these destructionists whose livelihood depend upon expendable people and treating Earth like a disposable planet. What if you're a white gay man who isn't Peter Thiel or Peter Thiel's husband? You get what I'm saying. At the end of the day, Peter Thiel types do not believe in live and let live. They're not really libertarian. They believe that they deserve to live, and for the rest of us, our job is to make sure they live as luxuriously as possible. Peter Thiel doesn't want to make a better world. He wants to live forever. And that's it. That's more me introducing something. I'm planning on making a video about these billionaires' obsession with immortality, but I need to go to like the library and find some old books about Quest for the Fountain of Youth. But we saw it in the Raw Outfit conversation when Peter Thiel talked about cryogenics and digitizing consciousness. This guy is very, very afraid of death. An interesting cycle happens with believers in God who do terrible things. They believe a God is watching them. They believe this God has standards and will punish those who fail to live up to those standards. And yet, they keep doing things that are, let's say, morally dubious, and God hasn't stopped them yet. In fact, they keep getting more blessings in life. It's as if God is blessing their evil deeds, unless it's a test, and they're failing the test. But the Bible is about forgiveness, and isn't it obvious by your actions that you have been forgiven? Changed verb tenses there at the end. And Peter Thiel has built up more of this faith-induced mania than the average person. Like, I have anxiety, and a pretty common problem is what's known as catastrophizing. Oh, great, I can't find my keys, which means I'm going to be late for work, which means I'm going to get fired, which means I'm going to be homeless, which means my wife and I will have to get rid of our wonderful pets, and then you just keep spiraling more and more about the consequences of just one mistake. Well, for most of us, that's not a reasonable way to think at all, and certainly oligarchs have way more room to fail than any of the rest of us. But in quite a literal sense, they have so much more to lose. And when you think about it, Peter Thiel's every decision kind of is a big Thiel. He's dedicated his life to ensuring that that would be the case. He wanted to be a big deal. He wanted to be in control of all the shit. And now he is. So now everything he does has very far-reaching consequences. And that's not mentally healthy. So he isn't mentally healthy. This was a gay kid raised Christian. Every single gay kid who is raised Christian has religious trauma. It's unavoidable. But now Peter Thiel is a gay Christian adult who funds and controls Christendom in America. Sort of. Again, we'll have to start doing some more of these projects in the future, but if you want to get ahead on the reading, check out Money Lies in God. If I could give Peter Thiel some advice he might listen to, he needs to consider the sort of the Hamiltonian notion of who lives, who dies, who tells your story. I was trying to Peter Thiel. Not very good. Peter Thiel is extremely aware of how disliked and hated and dangerous he himself is. He knows all that stuff. I mean, he clearly thinks that he has an important role to play in the end of the world. There was a weird notion growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, part of their theology, which is that the devil knows that God's going to destroy him. And instead of repenting and being like, God, I'm sorry, I know I'm the devil, but can I just get a mulligan on all that? No, Satan knows that he's going to be destroyed, and so he's just causing as much horrible destruction as possible before Armageddon, when God inevitably destroys him. Now, I don't believe in the Bible anymore, but I would liken Peter Thiel to Satan in JW theology. He seems to be trying to cause as much horrible destruction as humanly possible with his influence before his time ends, because, you know, nobody does live forever, and you're probably not going to be able to upload your fucking brain onto a USB stick, you dipshit. And yet his heels keep sinking in more and more and more. Why? Shame. I think shame is the great unifier of all these cowards. Like, if it wasn't the most horrific crime possible, it would almost be comedic to see just how many powerful, corrupt elites end up being pedophiles. But really, of course they are. Who else are pedophiles going to be friends with? The correct reaction to finding out that a man rapes children is probably something that we can't talk about on YouTube, but it certainly is not. Have a business meeting with the pedophile to see if he can help you craft a lawsuit against Gawker.com for accurately reporting that you were gay. If you didn't know, that's another thing that Peter Thiel did. All right, and that's it for this video. I hope you liked it, and join my patrons who are on the screen here. And I'm going to do something new. This is actually extremely exciting, so you're lucky that you made it this far in the video. In addition to all the other wonderful names scrolling across the screen, this month's program is sponsored by Vape Queen, a new member of the channel, and someone whose name kind of sounds like a brand for a second, which is what I was hoping for. If you want to be a sponsor like Vape Queen, well, just sign up for Patreon and I'll randomly pick someone every video or something. All right. Great. I really sold that one. I am not a great salesman.